The Inner Road Trilogy. Previously, in the first part of this story, we talked about effort, about what happens when you give everything you have and still do not arrive, about the kind of exhaustion that looks like showing up, about a road that asked more of you than it had any right to. If you watched that first part, you already know this feeling. The running without arriving. The movement that somehow never becomes distance. This is what comes after that. This is what happens when effort goes on long enough without an answer. It starts asking a different question. Not, why is the road not working? But, what if it is me? Opener. The doubt. This is not about productivity. This is not about strategy or mindset or believing in yourself harder. This is about what happens when you have done all of that. When you have shown up and tried and kept going. And somewhere in the middle of all that trying, something quietly shifted. The question changed. It stopped pointing outward and started pointing at you. Part 1. The Arrival. There is a moment, hard to name exactly, where you stopped being sure. Not about one thing, about most things. Decisions you used to make without thinking started to feel uncertain. Opinions you used to hold without effort started to feel fragile. Instincts you used to trust without question started to feel unreliable. It did not happen all at once. It happened in increments so small you could always explain each one away, until one day you looked back and realized the ground had been shifting for a long time. It sounds like a question you cannot quite answer, or a hesitation where there used to be certainty, or a loop that starts when you wake up and does not stop until you are too tired to continue it. What if I am wrong about this? What if I have been wrong about this for a long time? What if the problem is not out there, but in here? You do not say these things out loud, because saying them out loud makes them more real, and you are not ready for that yet. You can perform confidence. You have been doing it for a while. You know what it looks like from the outside, but in the in-between moments when the performance is over, something stays. Something that watches, something that asks, and you carry it quietly because doubt feels like a confession, and confessions have consequences you are not prepared to manage right now. Some things are carried so quietly they begin to feel like silence itself. Part 2. You have known. This. Maybe it started with something specific. A time when you trusted your read on a situation and it turned out to be wrong. Or when you made a decision that felt right and the consequences said otherwise. Or when someone told you that what you felt was not what was real, and you adjusted, because adjusting felt like learning. because learning felt like growing, because growing felt like what you were supposed to do. But somewhere in all that adjusting, your own signal got quieter, and you learned to wait for confirmation from outside before trusting what you felt inside. Some of it came from other people, people who were inconsistent, who said one thing and did another, who praised you in one moment and dismissed you in the next, who made you feel like you could never quite read the room. Over time, you learned not to rely on your own reading, because your reading had been wrong before, or at least they had made you feel like it was wrong. And once that pattern sets in, it is hard to see where it ends and where you begin. Maybe the goal kept changing. You met one version of it, and the bar moved. You adapted, and another threshold appeared, not because you were not enough, but because the system around you was not built to tell you that you were. And when nothing outside of you ever clearly says, yes, you got it right, something inside you starts to fill that silence with the only explanation it can find. Maybe I am the problem. Recognizing the fire doesn't mean you failed. It means you survived the heat. Part 3. Where it comes from. When you receive clear feedback, your nervous system learns. When you receive inconsistent feedback, your nervous system learns something different. It learns that its own signals cannot be trusted. It learns to wait, to check, to recalibrate constantly. It learns to treat its own instincts as suspect. That is not weakness, that is adaptation. The problem was never your response. The problem was what your response was responding to. We are not taught this. We are taught that confidence is internal, that it comes from within, that if you do not have it, you need to work on yourself. But confidence requires a mirror. It needs a reflection, something that says, what you brought was seen, and it was real. When that mirror is absent or distorted or inconsistent, you do not fail to build confidence. You build doubt instead, because that is all the material you were given. The doubt you carry today has roots. It did not appear from nowhere. It was assembled piece by piece from moments where clarity was absent, from feedback that contradicted itself, from expectations that were never spoken out loud, from the accumulated experience of never quite knowing if you were doing it right. You did not create that uncertainty. You absorbed it, because absorbing it felt safer than naming it. What was absorbed in the dark does not disappear. It waits. Part 4. Why it turns inward. At some point, questioning the road becomes too exhausting because the road does not answer. Systems do not respond to questions. People who are the source of the confusion rarely admit it. So the doubt turns inward, because at least there is something to interrogate. At least there, you have access, and the interrogation begins. Am I the problem? Have I always been the problem? Is something fundamentally wrong with the way I read things? You have been in this loop before. It starts with a question. The question circles. It finds no answer, so it starts again. From the outside, it looks like overthinking. From the inside, it feels like the only honest response to a situation that was never honest with you. You are not overthinking. You are trying to solve something using only the information you have. And the information you have was never complete. This kind of doubt is not a moment. It is a posture, a permanent slight bracing for what might go wrong, a low-level scan running in the background. Even when everything is fine, it costs energy you do not have a name for, because it is not a feeling you can point to. It is more like a weight that is always there, and some days you notice it more than others. Even a weight carried long enough begins to feel familiar. That does not mean it belongs to you. Part 5. What the doubt actually is. Here is what the doubt actually is. It is not a verdict. It is not proof that you are broken or wrong or fundamentally misaligned with the world. It is what happens when something in you is still paying close attention, still caring enough to question, still alive enough to notice that something has not been right for a while. The people who have stopped feeling do not doubt. They have gone quiet in a different way. Your doubt means something in you has not given up on finding something true. The doubt was never evidence that you were too sensitive, too uncertain, too much. It was evidence that you were paying attention in an environment that was not paying attention back. That is not a flaw. That is a form of honesty. A refusal to simply accept that this is how things are, even when accepting would have been easier. You kept asking because some part of you knew that a clearer answer was possible, even if it never came. I do not know how long the doubt has been with you. I do not know what it has cost you. I do not know what you have talked yourself out of because of it. But you are still here, still asking, still paying attention. And somewhere in the doubt, something quieter waits. Not an answer, a reason. That is the last question, and it is the one that comes next. Closing. You came here carrying a question you could not answer, and somewhere in that, something in you stayed honest enough to keep asking. That is what the doubt actually was. Not a sign that something is wrong with you. a sign that something in you never stopped paying attention. The next part of the trilogy, The Inner Road, is about what comes after that question. Not an answer, a reason. That is the why. Part 3 of 3. If you have ever doubted yourself more than the situation deserved, write one word below for the person scrolling after you who has never heard it named.
Something shifted so quietly, you almost missed it. At first, it was only hesitation, small pauses where certainty used to live. You started checking yourself more often, looking outward before trusting what you already felt inside. You did not suddenly stop trusting yourself. It happened slowly, in places where nothing ever came back clear enough to stand on. You adjusted because adjustment felt intelligent. You listened harder, you became careful. You learned to wait for confirmation from outside yourself. Some people made certainty impossible. Warm one moment, distant the next. Clear one day, unreachable the next. And slowly your own signal became quieter. You kept searching for clarity in rooms that never reflected you honestly. And somewhere inside, the silence started sounding like self-doubt. The goal kept moving, the answer kept changing. You reached one version and another appeared. Not because you were failing, because nothing around you was built to let you arrive. Confidence does not grow alone, it grows in places that respond honestly. And something around you stopped responding clearly a long time ago. So the doubt turned inward, not because it belonged there, because there was nowhere else for it to go. And the question started, loop after loop, without resolution, without rest. From the outside, everything still worked. You still answered, still something